I want to talk today about my thighs because they've been really good teachers. And to talk about my thighs, I'm going to have to start by talking about my grandmother. And I should just get to the point and tell you that my grandmother's freaking amazing. She does the splits, she runs every day, she climbs trees, she pushes a lawnmower. 90. Her body is capable of doing stuff now that, I mean, most of the people I know would have been thrilled to do at 25. And literally anybody who knows her would describe her as inspiring or beautiful or brilliant. But if you ask her, she will describe herself as ugly and dumb, which is just sort of like unfathomable to consider. And I used to find it sort of annoying, honestly, that she chose to be so self-effacing. She's so clearly astonishing. I finally realized, though, that she really doesn't see herself. She just sees that her computer is annoying or confusing to her. And she sees that her tiny little waist is smaller than her hips. And looking at her and realizing how much she misses in herself really has gotten me thinking about how much we miss, all of us, when we look too closely at ourselves. And I've got to make the point that my grandmother has given me the greatest gifts in my life. She loved me in a way that instilled in me a confidence that I was lovable and special, all the while also taught me that my big thighs were not beautiful. And so every time I looked in the mirror at my adult body through her eyes, all I saw was thighs. They were round, they poked out from my pant legs, like just see that little lump under there. She called them saddlebags, and they looked kind of out of place. Like there was some straight line that wanted to happen. If you could just smush in that part, it would all be all right. But my thighs weren't going anywhere. And so my entire life, I've just worked around them. Every outfit I've ever chosen was picked to hide them. Every swimsuit has been worn with a sarong so that nobody would see them. And when I looked in the mirror, I saw literally nothing else. I realized one day that I was probably walking out of a lot of bathrooms with like kale stuck in my teeth because all I was looking at was thighs, that one little tiny 4-inch span of saddlebags on my legs. There were, 60 other inches to look at, but I entirely neglected them for that one little piece. And somehow, as much as I looked at those thighs, I never saw them, right, for what they really were. I mean, there was this realization one day after talking to a friend that these 4 inches were my proof point that I belong to my favorite humans. They are a proof that I am the descendant of a long line of strong, sturdy, fearless women. I missed, in fact, that those same women literally held up the survival of their family on those legs. And my great grandmother is another incredible character. She was raised in the plains of East Texas, and her family was literally dirt poor. She was born to her family with a purpose to work the dirt and pick the cotton. Her entire existence depended on thousands of squats. She'd been down to pick cotton and rise back up. But it was the work she did that got her family out of the fields and into an easier life in town. And then her daughter, my grandmother, She's still using her strong thighs at 90 to enable her to push a lawnmower, to climb trees, to outrun people half her age. When she goes into her retirement home, she sashays around in her cute little leggings like a total sexy beast. She used her thighs to push out babies, and one of those babies made me. And then I came all the way down through all these lines, through all this will and strength and effort to me, who looked in the mirror and only saw lumps and bumps and totally missed that my entire lineage and my strength and my actual survival was nestled in those bumps. And my thighs have been freaking resilient. When I was 6 years old, my father sent me to the store to pick up some milk, and the driver who was going down the street swerved and struck me as I was crossing. And the first thing I remember about that moment, and really the most clear reflection I have on that moment, is looking down as I sat splayed out on hot Texas asphalt and a pool of spilled milk and scattered change around me, was this realization that my left leg was gone. Thigh, my little sweet femur, it was the biggest bone in my little girl body, but it had split in half. And so the only thing I could see, ironically, was the 4 inches of my saddlebags. Everything below those saddlebags was out of view, hidden behind me. Some amazing doctors crossed the bones and set me in a body cast. My family carried me around in a red wagon for months, and my little thigh healed. I was scared to cross the street for a lot of years, but eventually I crossed the street. And then later in life, I didn't just walk, I ran, darted across streets. But my thighs carried me into some of the most satisfying experiences of my life as I started to run distances and discovered that it was a meditation for me to run marathons, and that I could see cities and my own neighborhood from this very unique perspective as I ran around and explored the world on foot. So somehow my poor, abused thighs have now run 19 marathons, and very soon I'll run my 20th at Boston, where, with a lot of hard work and a lot of overcoming challenges, I was able to qualify for a race that had been just a big, audacious dream for me for so long. And it was all because of my thighs. Oh, and my thighs, like my babies, who are like my whole heart. The thighs, they played a starring role there too. I mean, I think probably my wider hips made it more comfortable for me to be pregnant. Like I actually kind of enjoyed it. But then in the deliveries, like my first daughter, I spent a lot of hours in labor with her. And finally my midwife looked at me and she said, "You're gonna have to relax your thighs." And it dawned on me in that moment that my strong thighs were actually holding my baby in. And the second I realized I could let her out, I was able to bring her into the world. Second daughter was a little bit different. She was in a real hurry to be born, so I used my powerful thighs to hold her in until we could safely let her come into the world. I mean, all of this, like incredible stuff. And still, every time I look at my thighs, I'm like, I wish you'd be different. My thighs, like, they're not straight. They're my thighs. They're my powerful, generation connecting, sturdy ass thighs. And it's time to embrace them. And in thinking about their strength, I found that I can see them differently. I mean, there were so many signs that my thighs were amazing, but I couldn't see it. And so as I think about my clients, I'm often triggered to ask what they're missing in their view of themselves and of the world. And for me, there are a few key things that we need to do in order to reshape our sense of ourselves. Number one, we've got to figure out what our blind spots are, what we're not seeing, and that can be the hardest part. But like most things, it requires paying attention. And whether it's writing down what those limiting or negative thoughts are, or simply having an anchor so that we notice those moments, it brings our attention to those things that maybe we ought to question. Maybe that truth is not the whole truth. And second, once we identify those blind spots, it takes a lot of practice to change the conversation we have with ourselves. I mean, I spent 40 years looking at my thighs and going, yuck. So to look now and say, hello, powerful thighs. I mean, it felt weird and it felt contrived. And honestly, it didn't feel all that authentic at first. But I knew that if I just kept saying it, there was a chance I could start to believe it with the same conviction that I believed that there was something wrong with my legs. And so I continue to practice that. And when those old thoughts come in, I go back to power. I go back to what anchors me, to the value and the strength of my thighs. Now, this last thing, I wish I could say, like, ta-da, now I love my thighs every day. But that's not how it really is. Rather, I look at them and most of the time I'm like, hello, powerful thighs. But sometimes I'm like, Sarang, where are you? So I think the third big lesson in this is patience, right? Like, change doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen over a single intention. It happens through patience and persistence and practice. So, with all of this in mind, I keep asking myself what I'm going to tell my little girls, my beautiful, amazing little girls who have curvy thighs and who will invariably have parts of their bodies that no matter what I say, they will wish were different. So I think what I'm going to say to them is that 4 tiny inches can't possibly measure a whole person. And that the pieces and the parts of ourselves that we scrutinize and criticize are often our greatest sources of strength. I'm going to tell them that we have to step back and stop looking so closely at ourselves if we want to actually see ourselves. And I'm going to tell them that when we see ourselves, when we look at where we come from and where we want to go, when we look at the whole of ourselves, then we see the potential for all that we can become.